Read your thoughts. From the future.
The movies of 1985.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to the movies of 1985. My name is Jason Hutchins. I'm stuck here in week 50 of the year 1985. That's Tuesday the 10th of December to Monday the 16th of December. The year is almost over, just 2 weeks after this, and we'll be ringing in 2026 or 1986, I should say. Now, what I do on this podcast every week is I select a movie from a video store via bingo machine. I've got 3 numbers left in the bingo machine, so let me spin one now and we'll find out what this week's movie is. And a ball has flopped out of the bingo machine. It is number 29. So 29, let me look, and of course, my spreadsheet's not loaded, but bear with me, it won't take long. So number 29 is the movie. This is good. It's another Canon Films movie. It is Lifeforce. I name-checked it last week when we did Runaway Train. So Lifeforce, I remember watching that when I was a kid. I watched it a couple of times, I think. It's about space vampires. It's probably the only horror movie on my list. I'm not really a big fan of horror. I tend to avoid choosing those movies, but Lifeforce is, it's probably sci-fi horror, isn't it? Now, I don't remember too much about it, so let me flick on the TV so you can watch a commercial while I go and rent it from, let me see, I think this week I'll go to Civic Video in Kingsley. Civic Video, one of those new video franchise thingies. So let's see, TV on, back soon.
Nobody can say no to these.
You have to say CC's.
Just say CC's.
Just say CC's. Just say CC's.
You know you can't say no.
Just say CC's.
Okay, I'm back. I'll just pop this in.
You know you can't.
And let's have a look at Lifeforce. I have the VHS cover in my hot little hand. Now, so on the cover, we have an image of a couple of space capsules, I think you'd say. They're cylindrical, and on each of them is strapped a naked blonde woman. Looks a bit weird. In the distance, there's a spaceship, like some sort of interesting shape, glowing green in the distance. We have the title at the top, Lifeforce, written in red letters with a, like what looks like a spark of electricity, but I think it's actually a cable. If you imagine an astronaut going on a spacewalk, because there's a couple of astronauts on the side and back of the cover, and they might be attached to the mothership via some sort of umbilical cable. It looks like it could be that. It's got an 18 on the cover, and up the top it says, The Canon Group Inc. presents Steve Railsback, Peter Firth, Frank Finlay, Nicholas Ball, Lifeforce. Over on the back, we've got quite a few photos, one of a naked woman again, and an interior of a spaceship, perhaps an explosion, and a little blurb that says, having discovered 3 deep slumbered humanoid forms during a routine search of a gigantic alien vessel, Commander Tom Carlson decides to cut his mission short and return immediately to Earth with his cargo. Now, presumably these naked women are the 3 humanoid figures that are in deep slumber. And I suppose this is a twist on Alien, where instead of discovering some, deathly creature that attacks everybody, there's going to be a creature that seduces everybody, a space vampire, in other words. Now, why was the commander the only member of the crew to just jettison himself to Earth? What did the rescue ship discover on the lonely orbiting spacecraft? what lay in store for mankind. Sorry, I was getting confused with the tense. And it says, the Force, more evil than the world imagined. Oh, the Force. Oh, the Force is strong in you. So it is interesting that they would call it the Force when it's a space movie, but maybe they're deliberately mashing up lots of different genres here. I think that might be the case. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about Lifeforce. It is directed by someone called Tobe Hooper, or Tobe Hooper. I think it's probably Tobe. And that name might not ring a bell, but you would recognize his movies because he did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Poltergeist, plus a bunch of other movies like Body Bags, Eaten Alive, Invaders from Mars, The Mangler, Spontaneous Combustion, Mortuary, Eggshells, I'm Dangerous Tonight, Crocodile, Dance of the Dead, Night Terrors, and so forth. Anyway, right now I think it's time to press play on tape and watch Lifeforce.
They watched. They waited. Now their time has come. Out of the depths of space, the ultimate terror. Moving, searching, destroying. From body to body, from life to life, from man to woman. Changing, growing, burning for our life force. From the director of Poltergeist, from the special effects creator of Star Trek, the motion picture, Lifeforce. In the blink of an eye, the terror begins.
Well, I've remembered why I enjoyed this movie when I was a 13-year-old boy. I mean, I'm still a boy, but when I was 13 years old. And it's because for a lot of the movie, the space vampire, known as Space Girl, walks around starkers, and she was played by an 18-year-old French ballet dancer called Mathilda May. Now, she can be quite creepy, even when there aren't gratuitous jump scares, but when the camera is focused on her face and you think she's in hibernation or she's asleep or dead or something, and then her eyes slowly open and she's got these dark eyes, it is quite creepy. But I can also see why young teenaged me thought this movie was quite compelling. To be honest, it's a B-grade sci-fi horror exploitation movie, you might say. It's a little bit porny. Not really. I mean, there's a lot of nudity, not too much more than that. The story is that it's the year 1986, just 1 year into the future, and the space shuttle Churchill is flying into the tail of Halley's Comet on a joint UK-US mission between the British Space Agency and NASA to perform some experiments on Halley's Comet. And of course, Halley's Comet did return in 1986. So this was quite prescient or quite, they were capitalizing on the fact that it was coming. It was interesting to see a space movie with the actual space shuttle, not a fake spacecraft like in Star Wars or whatever, but an actual space shuttle shaped ship flying into the green halo around Halley's Comet. And of course, what happens is, just like the movie Alien, they discover that there is an alien spacecraft hiding inside Halley's Comet. So they go and investigate that. While this is happening, there's a lot of green because that's the color of Halley's Comet, and all of the titles are in red characters. So that's, that contrast between green and red is quite visually striking. There's a really good soundtrack at the time. There's some award-winning composer did it. I think it was is it Mancini? No, Mancini. You know, the guy that did the Pink Panther theme. I'm sure that his name will come to mind soon, but you know what I'm talking about. He's done a lot of movies, Breakfast at Tiffany's as well. He did the soundtrack, and you've got all this music swelling up as the space shuttle goes to investigate this alien spacecraft. These astronauts with little jetpacks on their back go exploring inside the alien spacecraft, which is all red tinged inside. So what happens is the credit sequence changes from red characters on a green background to green characters on a red background. They go in, and the special effects in this sequence is quite good. You know, watching these astronauts fly around in zero gravity, and they actually find that all of the aliens inside this spacecraft are giant dead bats, like bats that are completely, completely dry. What's the word for it? Like all of the water has been leached out of them, so their bodies just crumble to dust. Apart from in these crystalline structures, 3 naked humanoids. There's 2 men and 1 woman, this space girl that we talked about earlier. And of course, the astronauts decide, let's take these naked people into our space shuttle so that we can save them or something like that. You know, they don't question the fact that these naked humanoids might not be humans after all. And what happens is Earth loses contact with the space shuttle Churchill, so NASA sends up Columbia. We've spoken about Columbia before. So NASA sends up Columbia to basically to find out what happened to space shuttle Churchill. And Columbia docks and the astronauts go inside, and it appears that there has been a fire and all the astronauts are dead. But these 3 naked humanoids are, still look perfectly okay. So they decide to take them to Earth to find out what is happening. Now, this all takes place in the first 5 minutes or so of the movie. They really get down. And I think this might say something about B-grade movies. Like we saw that B-grade action movie last week, Runaway Train. They just get right running with it. There's no slow build-up like there was with Ridley Scott's Alien movie. They just, hit the ground running. You'll drop straight into the story. Very little background given, and all of a sudden you've got space vampires. So back on Earth, they start investigating these naked humanoids. Of course, they just keep them naked. They don't put clothes on them or gowns or anything like that. There's a professor at some point that points out that a comet has always been a harbinger of evil, and that the ancients called their word for comet was disaster, because a disaster was an evil star, a disaster, which is quite cool, isn't it? So I really liked all the special effects and the wire work in this movie. So Nick Maley, who was one of the key creators of Yoda for The Empire Strikes Back, he served as makeup effects supervisor. And these shriveled humans, basically the space vampires, they don't suck the blood of their victims. They kind of drain the life force from them. And that's represented as sparks of electricity that come out of their mouth and eyes. And they drain all that life force. And what happens is that the alien that's doing the draining, and basically they are like vampires or zombies, because once you've had your life force drained, you become one of them, and you have the ability to drain the life force of other people before you completely shrivel them and wither away. So the special effects sequences show a shriveled alien or shriveled humanoid sucking the life force from a normal human, and they kind of swap places. The one that's doing the draining starts bulking up, and the one that's having their life force drains starts getting all shriveled and wrinkly. That's quite well done. And apparently these walking shriveleds that they used to call them, these desiccated robotic vampires, were controlled by radio and cabling and would take up to 20 people to operate. And some of the sequences of these puppets writhing around are quite good. It was also unexpected to see Patrick Stewart turn up as one of the doctors. He was fairly unknown at this time. It was still 3 years before Star Trek. And although he said that, although he has described this movie as the nadir of his career, the low point of his career, he said that Tobe Hooper was his favourite director to work with. So that's interesting, isn't it? There is a sequence where Patrick Stewart's, like a replica Patrick Stewart, has blood coming out of his eyes and mouth, and the blood is coalescing and forming the alien played by Matilda May, the space girl. So that was an interesting sequence as well. But like I said in the introduction, I'm not really massively a fan of horror movies. I like seeing sci-fi horror like this once in a blue moon. It can be quite entertaining. Like I said with Runaway Train last week, if you know what you're getting into, if you know you're going to be watching a B-grade sci-fi horror movie and you're in the right headspace for it, it can actually be quite interesting. Now, there were a few jump scares, which I never appreciate. I always think if a horror movie can get by without any jump scares, it's a much better movie for it. There are a few jump scares in this one, but I got through them and it was not too bad. And it did bring back, I sort of had hazy memories of watching this movie when I was a kid. Obviously, I was very focused on one particular part of the movie, but I did enjoy remembering the overarching story and how the space vampires were defeated in the end and so forth. Anyway, that's Lifeforce. I'm probably going to give it, well, is it as good as Runaway Train? I think for me, there is a big sort of nostalgic element to this one, and I think I've got to give it the same rating as Runaway Train. So that's 3.5 stars from me. I don't think you have to watch it if you don't think it's your thing. So I'm not going to say it's Mintox or Cactus, but if you like the sound of Lifeforce, then you might enjoy watching it. It can be interesting and funny, and watching a UK Hollywood style, big budget sci-fi disaster movie can be interesting as well, because they have the police are the old London police with their bobby helmets on, and they go into the underground train stations and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of like watching Werewolf in London as well. Anyway, that's Lifeforce. It is what it is. But now,
I'm driving along and I'm just singing my song. I'm in a news-free zone.
well, welcome to the News-Free Zone, everybody. It's that time of the podcast where we look back at the news from 1985 so we can remain ignorant about the news in 2025. Now, this week in 1985, General Electric, GE, announced a $6.28 billion acquisition of RCA Corporation, equivalent to roughly $18 billion today. This was the largest non-oil merger in business world history at the time. Obviously, it's been dwarfed since then. And the deal brought back NBC television under the fold of GE for the first time since antitrust forces separated them in 1932. And NBC's famous, which, you're really not going to know this if you're in Australia, but NBC has a famous 3-note chime as like a trademark, I guess, which is GEC, the musical notes GEC, and that's always spelled out General Electric Company. So that's where that came from. That's interesting, isn't it? So 1,200 miles away from that in Sacramento, Hugh Campbell Scrutton bent down to pick up what looked like trash in the parking lot behind his computer rental store. But the 38-year-old owner of Rentec Computer Rental had spotted what appeared to be a scrap of lumber, but it was actually a nail and splinter pipe bomb, Ted Kaczynski's Experiment 997. So Ted Kaczynski or Kaczynski is the Unabomber, and he killed this poor old owner of, well, not old, 38-year-old owner of a computer rental store by leaving a pipe bomb on his back doorstep. And this would result in a 17-year manhunt, one of the longest and most expensive in FBI history, until Ted Kaczynski was finally caught. Also this week in 1985, Arrow Air Flight 1285 crashed approximately 3,500 feet beyond the runway at Gander International Airport in Newfoundland, with all 256 people on board perishing in the crash. Most of them were US soldiers returning from a 6-month peacekeeping mission in the Sinai Peninsula, and this crash remains Canada's deadliest aviation disaster and the US Army's deadliest peacetime air incident all the way to this day. Now, isn't it crazy? I've said this to people many times. When we go through the news week by week in 1985, there are so many air disasters. Some of them are terrorism, but some of them are just crashes like this. Now, terrorists did claim responsibility, but the ensuing investigation showed that it was just a mechanical issue with the aircraft, and sometimes it's pilot error and so forth. But there are so many deadly airline disasters in the 1980s. It's just crazy how safe air travel is today by comparison. This week in 1985, The Jewel of the Nile opened as the sequel to 1984's surprise hit, Romancing the Stone, which of course is an Indiana Jones ripoff, isn't it? Now, Billy Ocean's theme song to this, When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Get Going, reached number 1 in the UK and number 2 in the US, with Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner and Danny DeVito appearing in the music video. This film, that's The Jewel of the Nile, also was the very last release ever on RCA's, or GE's I guess, Selectavision CED formatter disc technology. So that's some sort of video disc technology that died just as home video was exploding. So the last ever video disc, The Jewel of the Nile, well, in this particular format, that is. Now, there is some kind of relationship between that and Phil Collins, I feel, like Billy Ocean. Did they ever do a song together? I don't know. But this week in 1985, Phil Collins appeared as a guest star on Miami Vice, playing Phil Mayhew, an annoying con artist who takes on more than he can handle. Bit of a Cockney con artist, I think, dealing with cocaine dealers. Now, Phil Collins wrote and performed his song Life is a Rat Race specifically for this episode of Miami Vice. And Miami Vice paid up to $10,000 per episode for original music. And Miami Vice, I think, was one of the most expensive TV shows of the time, with each episode costing $1.3 million. The show's theme song by Jan Hammer had reached number 1 on Billboard's charts just earlier this month. And the Miami Vice soundtrack held the number 1 spot for albums for its 10th consecutive week. So a lot of people loved their Miami Vice in 1985. Also this week in 1985, the Sport Australia Hall of Fame was officially established at the Long Room of the Melbourne Cricket Ground. The landmark ceremony inducted 120 founding members, with Sir Donald Bradman named as the first inductee overall, and Dawn Fraser becoming the first female inductee. Now, Don Bradman was 77 years old at the time, and he didn't attend. He was happy just living quietly in Adelaide. Dawn Fraser, there are a lot of controversy surrounded her due to her prank at the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, which resulted in a 10-year ban from the sport of swimming, which effectively ended her Olympic career. And I didn't know very much about this, but after winning her third consecutive Olympic gold medal in Tokyo in 1964, Dawn Fraser and two male teammates decided to souvenir an Olympic flag. And they took the flag from outside the residence, I think, of the Imperial Palace or the Imperial Palace grounds, with Japanese police catching them during the attempt. Now, once Dawn Fraser apologised, the Japanese police dropped all charges, and the police captain, who was amused by the incident, apparently even presented her with the stolen flag as a souvenir, which she carried as the Australian flag bearer during the closing ceremony. But while Japanese authorities treated the incident lightly, the Australian Swimming Union was not amused and used the incident along with other misdemeanours, such as marching in the opening ceremony against their wishes and wearing an older style swimsuit. They took all of these misdemeanours, in inverted quotation marks, inverted commas, as grounds for disciplinary action. And the Australian Swimming Union banned Dawn Fraser from all competitive swimming for a whole decade, effectively ending her Olympic career. So that made her ineligible to compete in the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. The severity of this ban caused significant public outrage and media controversy, with many believing it was an overreaction. I'd say it was definitely an overreaction. And it became an infamous part of Dawn Fraser's larrikin public image and is often cited as an example of her clashes with sporting officials throughout her career. So there you go. An interesting story to end the news. Now, over on Usenet, there were just one or two articles this week, so nothing much. So I keep on breezing past net.cooks and throwing up in my mouth a little bit when I read the titles of some of their recipes. And this week it was the very Christmassy cream of oyster and artichoke soup with drunken prune cake for dessert. So, yucko. On net.movies, the movie Clue just came out very recently, and people really do not like it. They do not like the fact that you get a random ending from one of three possible endings, with people posting things like, what's the point of a whodunit having more than one answer for whodunit? So I guess that's true, isn't it? Anyway, with that said, that's all the news that we've got for 1985. So until next week, don't forget to rewind.